I was working a crap job that I never should have been working at to begin with, which is usually how these things start. Working at the mall, and this was about 4 months after I had quit wrestling and was saving up to go to New York and LA to pursue acting and comedy. And a wrestler by the name of Pat Gunner and his girlfriend walked into my store. And we got to chatting, and he asked me if I wanted to get back into managing. He didn't have the greatest promo voice. He had kind of a high-pitched voice. And he was one of the big clunkers, big guy, And he wanted me to manage him as a babyface. I was like, yeah, sure. I don't know why I said yes. I just one of those things where I was bored and just maybe give wrestling another shot. And so everything was going great. We went to our first match for Yankee Pro Wrestling up in Massachusetts. He wrestled Don Vega, and just basic babyface manager shit, kind of like pep rally, high school pep rally kind of gimmick. And it was good. No issues, no nothing. And then we went to our second match the following weekend at the WrestlePlex in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. It's like a converted storefront, wrestling arena. Those are pretty common these days. And he was in a tag team. I cut a promo. Same thing, babyface, rah-rah bullshit. And we got over and got a nice little, well, not nice, but very little payday. And at the end of the show, he asked me to go into the basement in the locker room and do some promos and do some vignettes with some other wrestlers and valets and stuff. I said, yeah, sure. And I didn't think anything of it. I just wanted me to do that so we could put a reel together and get other matches and some more work and other companies around New England and the tri-state area. And the following week, he wasn't booked, but he called me and said he was at a restaurant near my house and wanted me to come down and have dinner with him and his girlfriend. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I smoked a blunt and went to the restaurant, and I was baked out of my ass. And I walked in there, and he's sitting with like a table full of people. And I'm like, what's this about? And I'm stoned. And I'm like, why? You didn't say this was a business meeting. I'm wearing like, jogging pants and a t-shirt, and, I smell like pot. Like, what is this? And he kind of like read me a new one for like, being stoned. I'm like, you just said come down and have dinner at this random diner near my house. Like, you guys don't even live around here. Like, what are you even doing in this town? Like, and he lays out this whole plot to start his own wrestling company and make himself champion. And I was going to be the gimmick owner of the company. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And like, he said, well, I've already been calling people on your behalf. Calling who? Like, who have you been calling on my behalf for my supposed company? Like, what does that even mean? And he said, all right, well, the show's in 2 weeks. And he was just like really not listening to what I'm saying. And I was nervous about it. We started doing these vignettes at his friend's house who had like an editing suite. This is in 2002, 3, around there, before everybody had an editing suite. And yeah, he was just going to start his own company and run, opposite of like Assault Championship Wrestling and Connecticut Championship Wrestling and Northeastern Wrestling and all that. And I wasn't really interested in being a gimmick owner of a wrestling company. I mean, I liked having a babyface run. It was fun. It was, and he was cool for the most part. I mean, I didn't have any issues with him until this shenanigans. So the day of the show, I couldn't find the place and I was late. And he kind of like rushes me in and puts me in like a back room. And in the room were Jason Knight's old business partners. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, so we were like the guests. We were like the secret, surprise you know, guests or the surprise, talent on the show, me and his ex-business partners. I'm like, okay. He comes in, he's like, all right, just really, be obnoxious and shoot. They call it like be vile and be angry and, really talk shit on the microphone out there. I was like, okay, I guess. And, the ring announcer announces me as the owner of the company. And the financial benefactors were Jason's ex-partners. They came out. And I was just obnoxious. And I just started yelling and cussing and calling people all these sorts of names and all these old farts names. And, when I go back to like ringside, and I didn't know who was on the show. I didn't know I didn't want to know. And long story short, Homicide was on the show. It was actually Homicide's ring. And the main event was Pat Gunner versus Steve Corino. And I thought, oh, great, he's going to, Steve Corino's going to beat him. And, because he had just been NWA champion. He was a champion. He held the championship in Japan up until that recently and at that point. And Gunner had booked himself over Steve Corino. He beat Steve Corino flat and clean in the middle of Homicide's ring. And on the posters and on the write-ups the next day on the internet, it was JP Ward's, I forgot what the wrestling company was called, JP Ward's Wrestling Company held an event yesterday, and Steve Corino was pinned by Pat Gunner. That was like the headline in the local, fucking, so I ran out to the parking lot, got in my car, and he chased after me. I'm like, dude, I'm not doing this, man. This is nonsense. And that was the end of my babyface run. I only had 3 or 4 shots, and I was done with wrestling. I think I did like 2 or 3 more shots later on in life for the Savoldis, which is another fucking ordeal. Which is, you can Google that. JP Ward works for the Savoldis or something like that. And and I was gone, But it was just kind of like, a big shoot. It was like, why would you do that to me? But I was done. That was, I think, between 1999 and 2003, my first kind of little experience in pro wrestling, I was so physically and mentally sick. After that, I just hung out in the woods for a year up in Vermont and smoked pot and just kind of deteriorated. But yeah, that's my little babyface story.